My topic, the practice of carrying water, comes from a book by Barbara Brown Taylor, and it's called An Altar in the World. And it's a brilliant book that she wrote. It's an exploration on how we can see the world. Everything we do is spiritual practice. And so that's what she shares in this book, that everywhere we look, there is an altar to honor God. And every task is an opportunity to connect with the divine. And every person we meet is a reflection of God's infinite love. And so Barbara says that people tend to look all over the place for the divine. She says people will spend hours launching prayers into the heavens. They will travel halfway around the world to visit a monastery in India or take part in a mission trip to Belize. The last place most people look is right under their feet, in everyday activities, accidents, encounters of their lives. What possible spiritual significance could a trip to the grocery store have? Or how can something as common as a toothache be a doorway to a greater life? So in this book, she identifies simple tasks and activities, and that every place we can find an altar or a place of worship. And so her chapter on the practice of carrying water, and it's about the practice of labor and what it means to us. And she begins with sharing a story about her and her husband. And at the time, they were living on a farm. They had lots of animals, and that there was a snowstorm. And they were kind of excited to see a snowstorm. A snowstorm was a break from the everyday activity. And they had a lot of snow, and they went out and played in it and watched the animals romp in it. And it was delightful. Until the next day, the temperatures turned freezing, and the snow froze everything. And the branches on the trees, which began to fall, trees began to fall, and soon the electricity was out. They were in constant motion as they took care of themselves and the farm animals. She describes having to go out and chop the ice on the water feed for the horses and the goats, and warming the water to take to the chickens. So they were in constant motion. And this was days that they were having to do this, and to keep warm the best they could. So at some point, she realized that she could turn this constant activity and this stress, the high level of stress, she could shift it and use it as spiritual practice. And that as she did it, offer it as a time of service with prayer and chanting as she went about her chores. And so when we think of labor, because what she described was intense labor, labor is defined as physical or hard work, chore, effort, exertion, strain. Those are the words that define labor. What image comes to mind for you when you think of labor? Is it working with the hands, being outdoors? Is it a desk job? Is it climbing a ladder? Do you picture a firefighter, a construction worker, a mom, a teacher? We all have our own ideas of what labor means and what hard work means. I thought of the perfect visual to represent labor. This is on the lighter side of looking at this. That next to the definition of labor, I think it would be great if there was a photo of an unassembled box of IKEA furniture. Has anyone put together IKEA furniture? It is not simple. You think, I'm an intelligent person. How hard could this be? And it brings you, it's a place where you're in tears. There's even a website that 25 things everyone thinks when building IKEA furniture. It's just a roller coaster of emotion. So for me, that was one of the things that I thought about with labor, because that is a lot of labor. But here's how we can look at it. Is it labor or is it love? So when we're doing something, and let's use the IKEA furniture, putting together the IKEA furniture with the very minimal, if any, directions, and there's confusion about it and the stress about it. Do we see it as labor? How can we turn that into love? How can we see that as love? And of course, there are brilliant people around who love building furniture, and they created a service just to do that. They love doing it, and it brings them great joy. And I thought of what means labor to me. I love raking leaves on a sunny fall day, being in the Pacific Northwest, bringing order and beauty back to the lawn, exerting muscles to rake the leaves into a perfect pile, smelling the cool, fragrant air. I feel one with the season and enjoy the practice of bringing order and harmony. Now, it can be a sacred practice when I'm in that state. If I have the time to, and all the parts of my body are in good working order, so I'm able to do it. Otherwise, I see that activity as a chore. It's something I have to do. It's an effort. It's a grind. So what are the other activities that are labor? Washing dishes, cleaning house, taking out the trash. Do you dread it? Do you avoid it? Do you wish someone else would do it? Do you think, I want someone else to do this for me? I shouldn't have to do it. Here's what Emma Curtis Hopkins has to say. Sometimes people have thought that they ought to sit right down in the midst of dishes needing washing and account books needing straightening and refuse to do these tasks, because to be doing them is a sign in belief of labor. It is not yours to demonstrate the cessation of work. It is yours to settle your faith. Keep at your tasks till your faith is so clear that the free spirit sifting through it takes the dishes out of your way and calls another to straighten your account while you are being used as a redeemer. Wow. It is not yours or mine to demonstrate the cessation of work. I remember I was in a workshop and we were studying Emma Curtis Hopkins, and one of the participants said, I'm ready to stop doing my business. He was a painter and did beautiful work painting people's homes. And he said, I'm ready to finish. I don't need to do this anymore. And the facilitator brought up this quotation. It is not our job to decide that we're not going to do it. It's ours to settle our faith. When we settle our faith, Spirit comes in and shifts that for us. Spirit comes in and changes that. When we do our work out of love instead of out of necessity, joy instead of drudgery, something changes, and Spirit can come in and lift us up and move us to the thing we're supposed to do. And that's what it did for this person. He's been a friend over the years, and I watched him and how he was lifted up and put into a different place. And I had an example myself that I was working for a software company. Many years ago, I was the assistant to the marketing director, and he was getting ready to get married, and he was going on a 2-week honeymoon. And so I was worried about what was I going to do all that time, because I took direct uh, instruction from him about, he gave me leads to call and letters to write and things to do, things we needed to do for marketing. And so I took my direction from him. And with him gone for 2 weeks, he gave me like this long list. Okay, contact these people, keep your eye out on this, work on this project and this project. But I was thinking, is that really enough to keep me busy? What am I going to, here's what I was worried about. How am I going to look busy? How am I going to look busy at my job? Because he's going to be gone and I've got to keep going. So we had a plan and everything was in order. And 2 days before his wedding, the president of the software company announced that there were budget cuts. And as a result, I was one of the people laid off that day at noon, packed up my stuff and left. I think it was the first time, because this was before my awareness of spiritual stuff, spiritual practice. I think it was the first time I had an inkling of how thought works. Like, wow, I was so concerned, and and I was lifted up and released. And I very soon afterwards found another job, but it really got my attention. And in that time of my life, I was had a lot of different jobs. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my life or what direction I would go in. And so I was the assistant to the marketing director. I was the manager of executive suite office. I was working in a publishing company. I was doing all these things and I wasn't quite sure. So I was taking classes and studying about work and getting jobs. And so I started offering workshops to help people find their work, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I created workshops to help other people find it. So I found a place to be of service. So there's an evolutionary journey to labor and work in the world. And so if we look at it, the first time we're exposed to labor in the world is a job, right? In a job, the principle is labor. The motive of a job is survival. The job is based on need. I have a need, I need money, and so I'm going to work. I'm going to do a job to get money. Strategy, the strategy of the job is acquisition. I'm going to acquire money. What is required is effort. So that's our first look at a job in our evolutionary journey. The second one is when we move from job to career. The principle in career is learning. The principle in job was labor, but in career, it's learning. The motive in career is success. Career is based on desire. Where a job was based on need, a career is based on desire. The strategy in career is advancement. What am I going to do next? How is this work going to take me to the next one? And what is required in a job, what is required is effort. In career, what is required is courage. The third part of the evolutionary journey, we go from job to career to right livelihood or a calling. And when we find our calling, the principle is love. The motive is service. And a calling is based on inspiration. We do this work out of being inspired. The strategy is atonement. Atonement meaning giving back, to give back. What is required is faith. So we move from a place of effort in a job, courage in a career, and faith in our calling. And our calling is when we love what we're doing. It's just such an inspiration for us that we do it without thinking. We could do it 24/7. We just enjoy it. When we operate in service, in that place of inspiration, we live in love. Ernest Holmes says, there is something within you which is completely aware of its oneness with power, of its unity with life. Lose all thoughts of discord and fear, and permit the true pattern to come to the surface. What if we change the spelling of the word labor to SERVICE, to service, assistance, help, support, cooperation? What if we saw labor as service? And can't you tell people that do that? Have you ever been waited on in a restaurant by someone who just is jubilant and joyful and helpful? That they just love what they're doing? Or someone, maybe it is your accountant, or someone that does your gardening, or someone that you connect with that in that way where they are thrilled to be doing what they're doing, that they see it as a contribution to society. What if we saw our work in the world as a contribution to society? What if we saw our tasks in being in service? Barbara Brown Taylor says, if all life is holy, then anything that sustains life has holy dimensions too. The difference between washing windows and resting in God can be a simple decision. Choose the work, and it becomes your spiritual practice. So we can be of service anywhere. And some of us are working in jobs, some of us are no longer working, that we're retired, they're no longer working, but every day we're called to do something. And what is it that we're going to do? Whether it's washing the dishes, caring for grandchildren, caring for a spouse. What if we saw this instead of labor or a chore as service and do it in love? If we imagine what the world would be like if we could see it in this way, there's always going to be change. There's always going to be challenges. The opportunity we have is how we see that in the world. Are we going to see what's before us as a chore, or can we see it as a place of service? Are we going to see what is happening as suffering, or can we choose peace? Do we feel stress or harmony? And so there's 3 practices to keep us on purpose. And the first is to practice mindfulness. And that's where we are the observer. We are observing ourselves. Observe everything from how I start my day. What is my attitude going forward? What am I thinking? What are my emotions, my thoughts, my attitudes? That as I practice mindfulness, I can be the observer and be aware of what's going on. When we're aware of what's happening, we can be in dominion of what's happening around us. The second practice is to practice the presence. Because when we connect with the divine, when we spend time in prayer and meditation, with music, chanting, with qigong or yoga, whatever it is we do to find that place of connectedness, to bring us back to that centered place of the heart, that we are practicing the presence, then we see the world in a different place. And we bring the allness of spirit with us, with everything that we do. And the third is to practice gratitude. Because when we're grateful, gratitude shifts everything for us. And when we're grateful, we raise our vibration, we raise our frequency, we broaden how we see the world. We see the world with new eyes, with joy, with freedom, with love, with unity. So if we can practice mindfulness, practice the presence, and practice gratitude, it keeps us in a place of connection with the divine. And there is our altar in the world. So let's take this all into prayer. So how grateful I am for this awareness of the oneness that is God, of the oneness that is life, of the creative process of life itself that flows in and through and as me each and every day. And so I know for each of us here that as we've connected with the divine, as we take all that we've received today, we take this with us to expand our heart space, to expand our vibration of love, to expand our knowingness of what love is, of what the divine is, that every place is an altar in the world, that every place is a choice of love and unity. And so I know as we have lifted up into this oneness, into this newness, that each of us is that expression of love in the world. And so as we go forth with love and light, with peace and harmony and joy, that all that we need is already known and realized in the mind of God. And so our activities are filled with joy, that we see them not as labor, but we see them as service. We see them in love. We see them in joy and peace. And so I know for each one of us that there is a deepening and an awareness of love this day, and that expansion of love flows out through us, through our family, our friends, our loved ones, our communities, our city, our state, our country, and out, beaming love out into the world, around the planet this day, for love, for light, for freedom, for peace. And so I just give thanks for all of this that has been given with a grateful heart. I am so grateful for God's infinite love and light. Thank you, God, for this and for so much more. I release this word with deep gratitude, and together we say, and so it is. Thank you. Blessings.